This is a CNA podcast.
Hello, you're listening to CNA Correspondent with me, Steve Lai. And on this episode, we're going to take you to the forests of Taiwan. You may have heard the philosophical thought experiment that goes, if a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? But did you know that if a tree falls in a forest in Taiwan and no one is around to hear it, then there's a good chance it's being illegally logged by what locals call mountain rats?
Mountain rats work in a group in which they delegate the work at different layers, from finding tree, chopping them down, carrying them down the mountains, and before they hand over to the couriers and deliver to the buyers.
That's the Deputy Chief of the 7th Special Police Corps, Sai Wen-cheng. In the past, the police only arrested mountain rats who were responsible for chopping down the trees. But in 2020, that changed, when the police launched a special project aptly named the Rat Extermination Program. And joining me to tell us why this is important, how big a problem illegal logging is, and what's being done to stop it, is our Taiwan correspondent, Victoria Jen. Victoria, thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome.
Now, to do this story, I understand you had to put your hiking boots on and head out into the lush greenery. What was that experience like?
Yes, well, I must say it's the most difficult CC episode that I have ever produced because hiking through the virgin forest can be really challenging. The terrains are very rough because they're rarely traveled by hikers. So I had quite a few falls and cuts and bruises on my legs.
Oh, no.
Now, thanks to my rangers, I was able to survive the journey. But I must say it's all worth the while because the natural forest was so beautiful and magnificent. I felt like I was in paradise. Now, and I picked the topic to do the report is because that illegal logging in Taiwan has been rarely reported by foreign media. And I think it's very important to raise public awareness and to help protect Taiwan's forestry.
Yeah, very important job. And just quickly, how long were you out there for? Like, how much trekking did you do? Do you know how much ground you covered?
I think I covered very limited ground because of given the fact that, I have never hiked before. So we managed to finish 2 hours of hiking, and that was actually pretty much my maximum.
Well, we totally appreciate your efforts for getting out there. Tell us more about Taiwan's forests then and the types of trees that these poachers, or mountain rats as they're called, that they're targeting.
Well, more than 60% of Taiwan's land is covered by forests, and such coverage ratio is among the top 10 in Asia after Japan, South Korea, and Malaysia. And poachers usually, they target indigenous timber such as cypress, and they only grow in Japan, Taiwan, and the US. And now they only account for 4% of Taiwan's total forestry. So each of them, can you imagine, can be sold up to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow, so they're very precious indeed for these smugglers. And we'll get a bit onto the demand in just a bit. But what did you learn about how these mountain rats operate? How do they know which trees are precious and where those trees are?
Well, these mountain rats, they operate in groups, and the group leader would delegate works to its workers, and some would be in charge of locating the trees, and some would be in charge of cutting down the trees, and others would be responsible for transporting the trees to the processing factories and also the woodcraft artists. Basically, they know where those trees are is because they are very precious and rare, and that they would get specific orders from buyers with pictures. They would tell them that what type of tree that they want, and they would pay a very high price. So they would do whatever it takes to find those trees.
Wow. And why are they so precious, though? What makes them so valuable?
It's not only because these trees take hundreds and thousands of years to grow, but also because the quality of the woods is just top tier compared to most of the other tree types in the world. And also it's very rare. It only grew in Taiwan and Japan and also the US, it's not very accessible by consumers. And only a few places in the world that grows cypress. And then according to Taiwan's authority, Taiwan has actually the best quality of cypress. And that's why you see in a lot of the Japanese shrine, during the colonial period, they use a lot of those cypress trees for their shrines. That is also why it's a very rare timber and it takes such a long time to grow. So even though they're growing it now, I mean, by the time that they're fully mature, we will all be dead by then, you know?
Wow, and where is this demand coming from? It must be incredibly rich people that want the sort of the prestigiousness or what they perceive as being something to brag about. Like, I've got this tree, it's so many years old. It's such a such a hard thing to get a hold of.
That's right. The demand mainly came from collectors and tourists, especially Chinese tourists. Now, police said that there's been a spike in demand during 2011 and 2015 when there is a huge influx of Chinese tourists because many would buy them as souvenirs to bring back home because they don't have cypress in China. So also cypress is very rare and it smells really good. So they're very popular among art collectors and tourists.
They're not necessarily smuggled out of Taiwan directly then. They're able to be bought within Taiwan and then people just take them home as souvenirs?
No, actually, they are being processed by processing factories, and then they would go to woodcraft artists, and then they would sculpture these pieces of wood and then into art pieces, and then they would sell it there.
Ah, okay. Did you have anything else to add on where they're sort of where they end up?
Basically, media reports said that Sanyi Township in Miaoli County is where most poached wood used to turn up. It's Taiwan's wood carving capital with more than 300 shops. And Taiwanese and Chinese tourists flock to this town for its artwork. But shop owners there I spoke to, they tell me that it's no longer the case because the penalty now is too high for them to do so. Illegal loggers and buyers could face up to 10.5 years in prison and up to $650,000 in fines. So the harsh penalties actually serve as an effective deterrence for illegal logging.
Yeah, it's great to see that authorities are sort of taking steps to make sure it doesn't happen. And next on CNA Correspondent, we'll hear more from Victoria about what else authorities are doing to put a stop to these mountain rats and the challenges the 1,000 forest rangers face when guarding 1.62 million hectares of forests across the island.
Are you looking for ways to make your money work harder? Tips on saving, investing, or retiring early, perhaps? Or advice on big-ticket decisions like buying a house or owning a car? I'm Andrea Heng, host of CNA's top personal finance podcast, Money Talks. And these are some of the things we find out for you. Each week, I get a guest to share personal stories and answer burning questions that help you make sense of the latest financial trends. Go check out the complete Money Talks playlist on the CNA app, Spotify, Google, or Apple Podcasts.
You're back with me, Steve Lai, and our Taiwan correspondent, Victoria Jen. And before the break, I told you that there were 1,000 forest rangers guarding 1.62 million hectares of forest across Taiwan. That breaks down to one forest ranger responsible for an area roughly the size of 1,500 football fields. But it's not just the sheer land size that's the problem. Here's Forest Ranger Lai Bo-shu.
One time we ran into a mountain rat. Immediately he put down the stolen timber and started running. Of course we chased after him, but later we heard a gunshot. So apparently they were not alone. They worked as a group, so we had to stop and go back to ask for police assistance.
Victoria, tell us more.
Yes, the job is more dangerous than we had imagined because they not only have to travel through dangerous terrains every day, they also have to track down the mountain rats. And many of these mountain rats are armed with weapons. But because the rangers, they're not law enforcement officers, so they don't have the authority to arrest the mountain rats, nor do they have the authority to carry weapons. So our ranger told us that one of his colleagues was actually shot in the arm by one of the mountain rats when he spotted him. And so that was how dangerous their job is. They don't really have much of a protection. So that's why they avoid trying to have face-to-face encounters with these mountain rats. And instead, they would just, if they spot them, they would just report to the police.
Oh, so these mountain rats or these poachers are very well resourced, it would seem.
Yes, they are. A lot of them belong to gangs and some belong to drug cartels. And so that they know exactly where to look for, possibly where the police are looking, and they know all the locations of the surveillance cameras. And so that they would try to avoid all these places. And also they would place whistleblowers at every intersections of the roads so that if they spot a police officer or they spot like a ranger, and they would immediately alert their partners. So they are very resourceful in that sense.
Yeah, Victoria, you mentioned that one of the forest rangers you spoke to was shot in the arm. Did they share any other experiences that they had in encountering these poachers?
Well, basically, they said that when they do their jobs, they would try to make sure that they keep all their senses open. And for instance, they keep their eyes open all the time to see if there's any changes in the forest. And also they keep their ears open to make sure that they don't hear any unusual noises. And finally, they also keep their nose open to smell any aroma from freshly cut trees. So it's very important for them to stay on high alert at all time while making their daily rounds.
And you mentioned the cypress trees have a unique smell. I suppose that's a giveaway that they're looking for, that like a tree has been freshly cut down.
That's right. I personally smell the cypress tree and it smells so good. It has wood aroma and with a touch of lemon scent. And so it smells very relaxing and it's very soothing.
And hence the demand, I suppose. Tell us more about then this special project called the Rat Extermination Program that the police launched back in 2020. Has that improved things?
Yes, it has. The program is actually designed to track down not just the mountain rats, but also the buyers as well. Now, in the past, they only arrested the mountain rats, which had failed to effectively stop the illegal logging. But by arresting those who buy the illegally logged wood has also reduced the number of illegal logging cases. So once the buying decreases, illegal logging decreases as well.
I understand as well that authorities are going high-tech, using QR codes and blockchain technology in law enforcement to protect the trees. I've not heard that before. Can you explain how that works?
Yeah, sure. Taiwan Forestry Bureau claims that Taiwan is the first in the world using QR code and blockchain technology for forestry protection. They would upload every piece of timber to the system to obtain a QR code, and this can allow consumers to identify whether the product is using legitimate timber. So next time, Steve, if you come to Taiwan and you want to buy precious wood products, make sure that you look for the QR code and scan it with your phone and find out if it's made from legit timber.
Well, it's really good to know and a really good way of doing it. And I understand it's not just technology that they're using. They're also reaching out and getting the community involved in helping to keep Taiwan's trees safe.
That's right. They are getting a lot of the community people to volunteer to help, because hiking has become very popular now in Taiwan. And so that a lot of hikers, they are willing to volunteer and if they see any suspicious people or vehicles that are traveling around the areas, and they would just immediately report to the police. And also they have recruited some college students, and also they are planning to increase the number of rangers in order to better protect Taiwan's forests.
And have they got you on board as well? Are you going to join the hiking brigade now that you got a taste for it?
Well, I will give it a thought.
Okay, I won't push you on that one. But this podcast version that we're doing is a companion piece, in effect, to the story that you put together for CNA Correspondent for the TV version. As you put this story together, tell us a bit about your thoughts, the things you've learned, and if there are any anecdotes or stories that didn't make it to the TV version that you could share with us.
Yeah, well, I really want to say is that this assignment has given me the experience of many first-time experience on a lot of things. I mean, it's the first time that I hiked through virgin forest, and also I got a chance to fly the surveillance plane for the first time as well. And it's used to take high-resolution photos to detect any deforestation. But there is this one little issue is that there is no bathroom for the lady on the plane. So I actually have to put on an adult diaper just in case.
Wow.
So that was also my first time experience. And the flight was 3 hours. And luckily, I didn't have to go. So
I was going to say 3 hours, maybe you could hold on. If it was like 7 or 8, you might have a problem.
I didn't want to take the chance, though. But it was an amazing experience to witness firsthand the beauty of Taiwan's forestry. And also, I'm very impressed with how the government is taking forest protections effort up to the sky.
Victoria, thank you so much for speaking with me today and sharing with me what Taiwan's authorities are doing to stop these mountain rats. We've learned so much about Taiwan and its forests, and also about your first times for many things in this story, from hiking in the forests to adult diapers as well. Thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Victoria's account of tree poaching in Taiwan. I was heartened to hear how authorities in Taiwan have turned the tide using technology and community engagement to protect their forests and send those mountain rats scurrying for cover. But when it comes to poaching, whether it's trees or exotic animals, the reality is we all have a part to play. If we don't desire and choose these products, if we essentially stop the demand for them, then the poaching will stop too. The TV version, CNA Correspondent, airs every Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. You can also catch up with it whenever you like on cna.asia. Do like and subscribe to this podcast version that takes you behind the scenes with our correspondents. You never know what you might learn. Thank you for listening. Our podcast team is made up of Sai Ewent, Crispina Robert, Clara Ong, and me, Steve Lai.